Welcome to Module 3 of the 279W Windows Server Administration class. I am your instructor, Robert McMillen. And here are our objectives for Module 3. To create, configure, and manage user accounts, user account policies and profiles, create and manage groups, and create and manage group policy. So, creating and configuring user accounts. User accounts represent a physical entity such as a computer or a person. They can also be used as a dedicated service account for an application. Sometimes they treat those things as accounts as well. User accounts authenticate the identity of a user or computer and are used in authorizing access to domain resources. This is something important to remember because when you first log into your computer, you are authenticating your username and password to Active Directory. But when you go to open up a file on the server from your computer, you are involved in authorizing access to those resources. So there's a difference between authentication and authorization. One is the verification of the username and password. The other is the verification the user is allowed access to the resource. And the resource could be a printer, a file, it could be a lot of different things. So how to create an account, open Active Directory users and computers, and then right-click in the organizational unit you want, also referred to as a container. Point to New, click User, put in the name, initials, last name, modify the full name if you want, and then go ahead and put in the password. Now, by default, the password requirements are going to be 8 characters, at least one uppercase letter, and at least one number. You can also create accounts using a command line, using dsadd, and then put in that same information. Or you can import a file called csvde, which is the name of the command, and you can import the CSV file. So if you have a lot to create all at once, then that might be a faster way for you to do it. So there's different types of user accounts. You've got, of course, user, which is the standard one. inet.org person, which has more to do with the operating system. We won't be doing that in this class. Contact, you can create a contact if it links to something like Microsoft Exchange. You can create a default user account, such as, well, you can't create it, it's already part of the operating system, but you have the administrator and then the guest. Those are the default ones that come with it. You can create a computer account, just like when you join a computer to a domain, it automatically creates the account. You could manually pre-create the accounts for the computers if you wanted to. Viewing or setting user account settings. Well, before we get into that, let's just go ahead and take a look at creating an account in Active Directory users and computers. So click on the Start button, go to Active Directory users and computers from Administrative Tools. We'll expand our widget llc.internal we created earlier, and we'll right-click and choose New, and you see all these different types of users we just talked about. Click User. Let's move that over to the middle of the screen here. We'll call this Test. And we'll also call the login name Test. Next, we'll put in our same password we always do. And here we have a few options. We'll say for the password to never expire rather than force the user to change it. This isn't something you would want to do in a production environment because it's not as secure. And finish. So now we have our user. So now we can double click on our user or just right click on it, whichever you want to do, and you see all these different properties. Let's go back to our presentation. So viewing or setting user account settings. So if you double click on the user account, like we just did, you get to see the properties box. So there's a lot of different things you can change, such as the username, account options, profile, sets the location of the user's profile, what groups the person is a member of, sets group membership for the user, and the login hours, whether or not you want the account locked or unlocked. If someone guesses the wrong name multiple times, it will automatically lock the account, so we can unlock it from there if we need to. You can tell it to have the user change the password the next logon, or they cannot change the password. Password never expires, and then a couple other things as well. User accounts have a user profile, login script, and home directory associated with them. The profile stores the Windows environment settings and is used to determine computer and control panel settings for users. And you have a logon scripts and a home directory. So let's take a look back at our virtual machine. We have our test user. Here's some of the different things that we just talked about, things you can change, such as the name, the address, the account information, lots of different tabs that you can go in and change. You don't have to put in all that information if you don't want to. Now, what we just talked about was the profile. So if you want, you can put a profile path in and a login script. You can also designate a home directory. So a home directory is created already, but you can go in and customize it so you can put it into a different location should you want to. Login script looks to the net logon folder. So if we look at, we go in and type / DC01, we see a net logon folder. So by default, it will look for a login script in that folder. So let's go ahead and create a new one, and we'll call it a text document. We'll call it logon.bat, which is a batch file. And we have to go in, of course, and be able to view extensions because it's showing it as a text file instead of a batch file. We don't want that to happen. So we're just going to go ahead and uncheck all these different hide buttons. Click OK. So now we see that it's .txt, which we don't want. So we're going to change that so it's just .bat. All right, so there's our logon file. And from there we can edit it. We can type a bunch of map commands and things, which we'll do in a later module. All right, so if I go in there and I say my login script is logon.bat, it will perform any commands that are in that batch file. And when we're done, we can go ahead and click apply. All right, there's a few different types of profiles. There's local, there's roaming, and there's mandatory. A local profile is automatically created when a user logs in. So when you log into client 1, it will automatically create a local profile, which means in the users directory, you're going to see your account, just as we do here. So if we click on Explorer, Computer, C Drive, Users, there's all my local profiles. A roaming profile is if you choose to put your profile on a server and have it pushed down to your client when you log into the client as you. And the advantage to that is it'll get backed up on the server and it will follow you wherever you go. So if you move to a new computer, you're going to see your same profile. So that's really handy. A mandatory profile is when you change the profile extension user.dat, which is one of the files in your folder, you change that to a .man, and then the user can't make any changes to the file. So if we click on administrator, we can see a user.dat. If we right click and rename that to .man, then they can no longer make changes to that particular file or to their profile. We can set the roaming profile right here in the user profiles, and if you want to set that roaming profile, you can certainly do that, and then it will automatically move that location to wherever it is you put it, and then it'll be on the server instead of just on the local workstation itself. So let's move on. From Active Directory users and computers, you can delete accounts, disable, enable, unlock, rename, reset a user's password, all those things simply by right-clicking on the user. So if we right-click, you can see here we can copy it, we can disable it, in case we want to keep the account but we want to make it so the user can't use it. Re-enable it. Rename is a popular one when somebody changes their name. So you can click on rename. We'll call this test 1. And then when I hit enter, you can see it gives me the option to rename everything. I can also reset the login account to test 1, the display name to test 1 as well. Click OK and you see that it's updated. User account policies must be consistent across the domain. This is achieved by only allowing user account policies to be set from one location in the domain. The highest precedence group policy object linked to the domain container is known as the default domain policy. So if we go into Start, Administrative Tools, and then we go into Group Policy Management, we see our default domain policy, which is going to be assigned to everyone. There it is, default domain policy. So if we wanted to, we can edit that policy. Right-clicking, choosing edit, and now we see dozens of different policy things that we can edit. Hundreds, actually. Lots of different things we can go in and edit. And we can also create more group policies and apply them to different organizational units. So one of those policies, which is a real common one, is the password policy. You can go in and say what's allowed and what's not allowed in a password policy. So let's do that. So we'll need to go to Computer Configuration, Windows Settings, Security. So Computer Configuration is at the top. There it is right there. And then we go to Windows Settings and Security. Windows Settings and Security. Okay. And then we go to Account Policies and then Password Policy. Account Policies, Password Policy. So here's where our policy is set. So by default here, we see minimum password length is going to be 8 characters, password age, minimum, and then maximum password age, unless you have the box checked that says password never expires. And such things as enforcing the password history. So you can say you can't have any password you've already used in the previous amount of times. In this case, it's set to 24. So let's go ahead and change the minimum requirements. We'll go ahead and change that to 3. Of course, that will lower our security, but that just shows you how you can change it. So now our users only have to have at least a 3-letter password. Also, the complexity requirements is having the upper and lower case and the numbers, which is listed right here. It tells you all the different rules. And if we want, we can disable that or leave it enabled. So there are 6 settings, as I just showed you, for the password policy. Just again, this is an example. Enforcing the history, maximum password age, minimum password age, etc. Account lockout policies works the same way. If you want, you can go ahead and follow this path to the account lockout policy. And from there, you can configure out lockout duration, threshold. This is for when people type in the wrong password. You can also reset the lockout counter. Groups. Groups are objects that can hold users, contacts, computers, or other groups. They decrease the administration time and improve network performance. So if you wanted to give access to a folder, for instance, a shared folder, instead of adding every individual person to that folder, you can add all those users to a group and then add the group to the folder security. So if you do that often, it will save you a lot of time. So let's go ahead and close our group policy here. And in our default users organizational unit, we'll just right click, we'll choose new and group. And we'll call it the test group. From here, we can create 3 different types of scopes. A global policy will affect everyone in the domain, actually multiple domains. Domain local will affect only just this one domain. And then universal will affect every single domain and every single forest if you have multiple forests. It defaults to global because that's going to be the most common. On the right-hand side, you have a security group, which is if you were going to set permissions onto files and folders, you would need to create a security group, which is, again, is the most common. A distribution group is if you're using Microsoft Exchange, then you can create an email list group. So we'll go ahead and create a security under the global. So there's our test group. We can go in and double-click on test group, click on members, and you'll be doing this in your lab. And we'll just type in our test1 user, add it in, and there it is. Now if we double click on test1 and click member of, then we'll see that we are a member of the test group. Also by default, the domain users group. So I just showed you how to create a group. You right click on the container, choose the new, select the group, put in the group name, and again you can also use ds-add just like when you created a user. As I discussed, there are security groups and distribution groups. And you have domain, global, and universal. Each scope determines the type of objects that can be included as members of a group. And I just showed you how to add members to the group, so I won't go over that again, but you can read it if you'd like. And group policy, which I just showed you, group policy management. It's designed to simplify administration by allowing administrators to configure users and computer settings and have it apply to multiple users and computers. So by having those policies and assigning them to various different organizational units, which each of these folders are, you can control what users can see and do when they log into their computers. So some of the group policies you could do, besides the security policies, which we talked about already: folder redirection, locking down a computer or desktop so they can't make any changes, define log off, shut down. You don't want users shutting down your server, so if it's a remote desktop server like a terminal server, you want to take the shutdown command out of it, but you want to leave it in on their local workstations. Automate installation of application software and maintain Internet Explorer and configure standard settings. So you have a couple of different types of groups. There are local groups and there's Active Directory groups. I just showed you the Active Directory groups, which you find in Active Directory users and computers. But all non-domain controller computers also have groups that you can add in locally to those particular computers. We typically don't do that, though, because we want it protected within Active Directory. Active Directory group policies are a set of rules that are bound within a policy object. The policy object is applied to an Active Directory container, or OU. These are on the left-hand side. These are called containers or organizational units. I don't know why they're called different names different times, but they are the exact same thing. By default, when an Active Directory is created, which we did earlier, two group policies are created: the default domain controllers policy and the default domain policy. We edited the default domain policy. We edited the password requirements on the default domain policy, which affects every user. However, it doesn't affect users that log directly into a domain controller. So if you log into a domain controller, you have to edit that policy instead. And you can create lots of other group policies if you want to lock down various different groups of of individuals in the organization. So in conclusion, we talked about creating, configuring, and managing user accounts, user account policies and profiles, creating and managing groups, and configuring group policy. And that concludes Module 3.